name is Loretta Bondì, it's my surname, which means good day in Italian, so again, Bondì for you. I am a member of the managing board of the Casa, internazionale, delle donne, but I wear two hats here because I am also the director of international projects for the Free Social Cooperative upstairs, which deals with violence against women, human trafficking, and discrimination. So in the first part of our getting together, I will wear my first hat, which is the Casa Internazionale delle Donne. In the second part on Friday, perhaps I will wear my second hat as a Be Free member. And that makes sense because you will have this encounter with the Centro Astalli as well, which has a mission which is somehow germane to ours. So we could perhaps tackle the issues from a different angle. Now, La Casa Internazionale delle Donne. Please tell me, is that a prison? Not really, actually. It wasn't. In a sense, it was even worse. And it's important that we know this because we find it very befitting that actually we occupy now this 17th century building that was devoted to keep under confinement, and if you have an opportunity, you will visit the cells upstairs, women who didn't conform. The lesbians, the women who refused arranged marriages, the deranged, also this is fitting, I would say, in certain circumstances here. And therefore, we come from a long line of non-conforming women. And our past is our prologue also in another sense. In effect, the gathering of women in this building stems from another experience that we had in the late 1970s. The women's movement, and that is where we belong. So we are feminists. It's not a bad word. We occupied another historic building in the center of Rome, again it was 1978, and you will see the pictures of that occupation upstairs when you tour the second floor, but there must be some pictures there as well. That was a sheer occupation. The women movement gathered, the different groups that compose the women movement gather in front of this building, which is near Piazza Navona. We sort of opened the big door and squatted there for a few weeks, and then we started making this building operational. It was really a rundown building, which we'll have to vacate later on because it was really literally crumbling. But we made it a center for the women movement and for women from around Italy and the world to gather. But there was also an embryonic format of the social enterprise that we have now created in this building. So the building was crumbling. We had to vacate it for our own safety. Let me tell you that the authorities were very, very happy to actually dislodge us, evict us, but they didn't know that we would occupy another facility, which was this one. So the occupation lasted for several years. It was a group, again, coming from the women's movement, that occupied this particular building, which was also a crumbling building when we occupied it. And then later on, we entered into negotiations with the municipality of Rome, which owns the premises and maintains some offices which are actually unoccupied right now in the other wing of the building. And therefore, the occupation was transformed into a convention with the municipality of Rome, Comune di Roma, for us to have a legitimate right to stay in this building, in recognition of the social value that the groups that gathered around a consortium to manage this building brought to the community as a whole. So I would say that there are, you know, in the course of time, we ostensibly should pay a rent to be here. And this is part of the problem that we will discuss later on in our relationship with the institution. But to complete this very brief historical excursus, I could say that during the Jubilee year in 2000, the municipality of Rome agreed to update, restore some parts of this building, which was the maintenance is very onerous and was all on our, you know, on our shoulders essentially. So part of this building was restored by the Comune di Roma with monies and resources that were allocated for the Jubilee year, and therefore we managed to basically hook ourselves to this process and obtain something that we have been screaming for many, many, many years. Okay, who's in this building, do you know?
No.
There are at the moment 32 organizations. And I would say that we cover all sorts of issues that pertain to the daily life of women. So there are organizations here like my own, which deals with violence against women in all its aspects. Others are here as well with this kind of mandate. We cover health issues. There are, do you have a question?
No.
Oh, sorry. I really don't want this to be a speech. I really want to be really interactive. We cover health issues. We offer health services here on the premises. We offer legal services for a variety of instances and issues that can come from women. We are very active in the environmental movement. We have a beautiful garden of permacultura over there. My goodness, I mean, it's really a whole universe of things that we do here. We produce cultural events. We have a nursery. Until a year ago, we had a place devoted to co-working and to promoting women's enterprises. What am I leaving out? Health, vulnerabilities, urban and otherwise. So it's really a whole gamut of...
Have those services kind of grown and developed in the
yes.
time that you've been here?
Yeah, there are association organizations that came here with were the original occupants of the building, and then it grew. It grew because one of the aspects of, as you teach me, of the social enterprise is actually establishing not a client base as you know, a business enterprise would do, but a relation with the community. So that is essentially what we do. Yeah, if you ask me the way I see this place and also my own organization as a social enterprise, I would say that yes. First of all, as opposed to a business enterprise, I would say a social enterprise produces vision as opposed to a business plan. It serves a community as opposed to a client base. It generates income as opposed to making profits. And all three aspects of these are covered in fantastic. The juridical configuration, we are a consortium with a social goal. Our community is sort of, you know, the Russian dolls. The inner core is composed of these 32 organizations that actually have offices or operations in this building. And you will see again, when you go for the tour, you will see the offices that we rent out as the Casa to it's a political rent cost. But anyway, those offices are rented by the organizations.
And could a supplementary, are they all Women's organisations?
All women's organizations.
So you don't have anything other than women-focused
No,
organisations?
it's by statute, what we can ask here is only groups, organizations that are run by women. Okay, that is, that is a conditio sine qua non. Then this is the inner core, the smallest doll within this matryoshka configuration. Then we serve the community, the immediate community around us, which is the municipal district #1 of Rome, because this is the historical center, and that is the community with which we relate on a regular basis. And then, you name it, we have visitors that come here every year, which vary between 30,000 and 40,000. So, and they come from the wider city, from all Italy, from the international arena, and it's really a very, very varied, I cannot even say group of people. There are groups of people who come here. We have hosted an international conference on the gift, charitable organizations, for example.
So the 35 organisations, some of those may actually be concerned with what we might call outreach, i.e. not this municipality, but with other parts of the city or beyond.
Oh, absolutely. No, that is it. I mean, for example, I can talk about my own, but I can talk of many other organizations here. Here we have our offices and our base of operation, but actually we operate throughout the territory in the region Lazio and beyond. For example, my organization has runs shelters for victims of violence and victims of human trafficking, survivors of human trafficking in Rome, in Viterbo, that is the region Lazio, then Molise, central Italy, Marsica, Abruzzi, central Italy, and 2 shelters in Naples. So, anyway, the point is that this is a gathering point. This place is a vector, if you want, for other organizations to find an operational springboard. But the fact is that we are, yes, we proliferate, mushrooming throughout the city and the national territory. And it's also a case of Mohammed Mountain kind of thing, because as I said, 30,000 people come, more than 30,000 people come here, and we host events and occasion for debate and comparing notes with a variety of realities outside of the city and outside of the country. One of the things that we have tried with more determination, and I would say with the solidarity of all the organizations that work here, is to reach out distantly. Each and every one of these organizations in the house has in some way operated and reached out to these communities. We bring the communities in. We try to foster some sort of common citizenship with not only the migrant communities that reside in Italy, but the potentially migrant communities outside. So that, for example, an active exchange with countries, women who come from countries in the southern Mediterranean area, and so forth. So we are very mindful of the effects of environmental change in the lives of women. As you know, we have big scandal called the terre dei veleni, the poisonous glands in Italy, and that poisoning on the environment is shouldered on the front line by women. A big part of their budget and fracturing the general economic of things to the running of the place. And then we created originally 2 income-generating activities. One is the hostel upstairs, and we have kept that. And then the other is the restaurant, which is not really a restaurant, it's an internal cafeteria. We used to run that restaurant until last year, and then we realized that we couldn't go on. So we have now enlisted the help of professionals who are doing it, and therefore yes, we were able to shed that part of our activities that for us had become not at all income generating, but really entropic, let's put it this way.
Just on that point, in the past was that run by volunteers?
Yes, yeah, but mainly here it's still voluntary work. It's not, the work, for example, that we do for the Casa, it's all on a voluntary basis. The board of directors serves on a voluntary basis. We have, I can't remember how many, we have 4 staff which are paid with salaries, but the leadership of the Casa is basically operating on a voluntary basis. It's good that we are, older in age, and therefore we can. But this is also another problem. Since we are not in the position of paying salaries, we have to, to deal with a leadership that is aging. And that's the truth. And, young women are attracted, but they are not, and they are here and they basically serve on a voluntary basis very, very often. We find it difficult to attract permanent staff to work for the house and the Casa Internazionale on a permanent basis.
Okay.
Because we cannot pay the salaries.
Oh, of course, that didn't have an effect in that sense. Of the board members of the Casa, are they there quite a long time? Is there an opportunity?
Well, we served for 4 years, but generally, our poor president, which maybe you have met her, Francesca Koch, she should have been actually basically withdrawing from the mandate 2 years ago. But again, it's difficult to find people, and she serves on a regular basis. Every day she works, 16 hours a day for free. I mean, she does this on a basis, on a voluntary basis entirely. We want to clone her, but another thing that happened in the past 2 years has been the revival of the women's movement, particularly with the campaign Non Una di Meno, that you are very familiar with. And so we managed on the 26th of November last year to bring 250,000 women in the streets of Rome protesting against violence, and they came from all over Italy. That had a return for the Casa as well, because we are among the leadership of the campaign, and the leadership is it's very diffuse, so it's a pretty elastic concept here, but we are at the core of the campaign. There is a recognized role for the International House of Women in that campaign. Can I call it Casa? So that and that put us, as I said, in contact with an enormous number of young people who really wanted, some of them came to issues pertaining violence against women and other women's issues for the first time. And so here at the Casa, we were able to interact and to explain what we're doing, and perhaps entice many of these young people to keep in touch and don't forget to write. So that is one of the aspects. I mentioned before the fact that we entered in successful negotiation with the municipality of Rome and signed a convention that essentially allows us to stay here. We are not occupants, so we have a regular contract, and ostensibly we should pay a rent, which we don't, because we can't. Or we do in part nowadays. So from time immemorial, we have in negotiations with the municipality of Rome to replan our debt. Interestingly enough, the very same municipality of Rome estimated with economic models that the services, the complexity of services that we offer in this house equals 700,000 euros, which is most of our debt, essentially. So we are even. That is our perspective. We are even. Actually, we do a lot more that cannot be quantified in a model business plan. But the point is that given the political situation in Italy and with the municipality of Rome, we, how can I put it? We have interlocutors that shift every 2 months. You know, you have here a responsible person for the patrimony of the city of Rome, who has changed now 5 times in the past year. The previous Rome administration was made defenestrated by an act of a notarial act. I mean, I don't know whether you're familiar with these things because they are bizarre, aren't they? But that is our reality. So, and that is at only the municipal level. Now, at the national level, our natural interlocutor is, of course, the Department of Equal Opportunities, correct? Now, what happened there? First of all, the department has become a department due to a declassification. It used to be a ministry, okay, with full functioning ministerial prerogatives. Now it has been, downgraded to a Department of Equal Opportunities, which is in the hands of the presidency of the Council of Ministers, Renzi once, and then Gentiloni nowadays, our Prime Minister. Now, when this decision was made, the leadership of the Department of Equal Opportunities was left vacant for a while. Then there was an interim person who came, and who had, I have to say, a very good person and very, she meant well. The problem was that there was a learning curve because those are not easy issues that, as you can imagine, one of the main issues that we have to face and which has economical implications for us is that the Italian government, in defiance of CEDAW, of the Beijing Agreement and Platform of Action, has not essentially mainstreamed women's issues in the operations, day-to-day and operations of the government and the vision of the government. So that's why I'm saying that there is a very steep learning curve for whomever would occupy that leadership position in the Department of Equal Opportunities. Then after this interim person left, the position was kept vacant for months. And now we have a minister, Minister Boschi, who was occupied with other issues. She leads the ministry, the Department of Equal Opportunities, but it's not a full-time job, let's put it this way for her. So anyway, to make a long story short, one of our problems in replanning our debt, 2, having a platform to plan future action, is this lack of interlocutors. The impermanency is our problem, because we get always to the point in which we are ready to sign on the dotted lines and the interlocutors is defenestrated. That's it. Yeah. This said, there is another circumstance that militates against our ambitions, let's put it this way, and the fact that Italy only now is coming out from probably the most prolonged financial and economic crisis after World War II. And that affects all operational abilities of whomever works in the social enterprise arena, because traditionally our interlocutors have always been the government in all its aspects, the national government and governments at the local and regional levels. So when resources are not available there, they are not available for us as well. I know that you are here, you are brought together here through the resources that the European Union has made available for you. The Casa Internazionale delle Donne cannot apply for those kind of grants because we have a debt. So it's really, it's a vicious cycle. But the point is that we are keeping afloat precisely because of the volunteer work that people invest in this house, because we have been able to reach out with the ever-expanding constituency that brings in ideas, refreshing our vision, refreshing our purpose, and also because we are so steadily committed to the issues that we tackle, that, I mean, that commitment, I must say, is unshakable. I was telling Sergio before that I came back to Italy after 27 years living abroad. That was 4 years ago. And on the one hand, I was impressed by this sort of magmatic environment in which we have to move, because again, the lack of interlocutors, the financial crisis. But on the other hand, I was immensely heartened by the commitment, intelligence, application of a gazillion women who are bringing us some really vital humus to stay alive and continue. This women's movement that has been very, very active since last year is really bringing a lot of new lymph to this, to our organization, to other organizations, in the organizations that are inside the International Women's House. The financial crisis is probably over. As we reach out to this ever-expanding circle of friends, I think that some of these friends will become, and have become in fact, our supporters, even with resources, and not only money, I mean with work and ideas and so forth. So the women's movement, the betterment of the economic circumstances, our capacity to now to think outside the box of state and government, local and government, national and local government support is certainly something that will put to fruition.
Is this a model that we would expect to see across Italy?
That's in fact I was missing. I lost for a moment my train of thoughts because I wanted to actually add to that. The creation of this place has also given impetus to a variety of other places that are not exactly like this, but they are houses for women. And they behave in different ways. They have different missions, different mandate, different constituencies, but essentially the idea that women in a city need a place which is a place that fosters initiative, even entrepreneurial initiative and dialogue is essential. So there are several of these women's houses around Italy. We were talking, and outside of Italy, we were talking with one of the members of the House of Women in San Francisco. And it's interesting to see how they differently operate. And one of the issues that, of course, was at the core of our discussion was how do you generate income, okay? Now, they have a very imaginative way to do so. They started with a modest amount of capital, which we never had, and then they give loans to other women. And these loans are income generating. Now here, you know, this is Mars and this is Venus, so it's impossible to do the same kind of scheme, to replicate the same kind of scheme here. But I do think that through the very existence of this place and the example that we are giving not only to our national partners but to other international partners, women are put to test to generate new ideas and new ways for support. I would like to quote Betty Friedan in this regard. It changed our lives. So it's difficult to assess that because, of course, it varies from individual to individual. But in a larger sense, I think that the very fact that we proved time and again, against all odds, that we can get together and productively generate something that is meaningful for women, and potentially even a way to earn a living, it's important. I think that impact has been very, very important. Another example of good practice that I forgot to mention at the beginning of my presentation is the creation of this National Archive. If you visit it, it's called Archivia, but with the feminine ending, which gathers an immense amount of publications that have been produced by the women's movement all over the world, and a collection of 35,000 pictures, photographs. And this archive has become an indispensable point, stopping point for scholars, students, writers, academicians from all over the world. They come here and they study through the material that, again, through a largely voluntary enterprise.
Is that income generated in itself?
It doesn't generate income, but it has received grants.
Okay.
Yeah. So we are actually operating that facility on the basis of a grant foundation, so to speak.
Okay. So it covers all the costs of maintaining an archive?
Well, relatively. I mean, if you keep out the salaries, yes. Yes. That is our major problem, yes. As I mentioned before, people who are, managing not the individual organizations, but this house as a whole, work on a voluntary basis, period. In fact, as I said before, if you take a look at the median age, you will see that it's very elevated.
And do you think will be priority going forward in years to come that your organisation should be able to stand on its own 2 feet, really start to generate incomes from multiple sources, maybe diversify your sort of retail offering or income streams in order to maybe to be not so reliant on grants or from payments from the exchequer? Would that be a priority, or are you happy with status quo?
Well, it's no, status quo cannot remain.
Okay.
Because the expansion has to be commensurate to a donor basis that responds to such expansion. And we are expanding malgré nous, in a sense. But the interesting thing here is that we actually, in terms of current accounts, we're even.
Okay.
Okay? Our major, the big 100,000 pound gorilla in the room is this debt, because otherwise we'll be okay. Surely we cannot pay salaries. For that, we will have to generate additional money from a wider variety of sources. But in terms of current accounts, we're fine. We're even. We are in the black. It's true, these 32 organizations are, it's a networking kind of operation. It's also true that this building, we are the management board of this building, but we have a general assembly. So we are the executive branch, if you want, and the associations that are part of the consortium in this building are the parliament, okay?
So the assembly is
is
composed of those 32.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they have, they have the power to examine the budget, to veto some operations, to embrace proposal or to reject them. At one point we were thinking, in fact a couple of years ago, to expand our stakeholders base to create a foundation, okay? But this idea didn't fare well with the assembly, therefore that plan was stopped. Because there is, as our Irish friend was saying, some sort of, comfort in the status quo. And that is something that we are trying to shake somehow. Now, there is also, and this I think that in all, social enterprises like this one, I don't know of any of these particular, which has a direct affinity with our Casa. But in general, if you think of pretty large organizations, is really define what kind of role you want for from your managing board. We do not just manage as a board the day-to-day operations of this building. We also provide vision. We also run projects. For example, we have now, for the past 2 years, run as the Casa, a project which is called Chalupa, which is translated into lifeboat. And essentially what we do, we, through a grant from a private donor, we reach out to women in particular situations of vulnerability. We also, as a board, propose something that actually is going to start at the beginning of October, that we found as a board was sorely missing in the running of not only our own social enterprise, but the social enterprises or any kind of income-generating activities on the part of women. We are launching a course, a training course in 5 lessons with the Banca d'Italia, which is the national bank, like the Fed in the United States, and the Global Thinking Foundation on financial education. And it's very basic, how to open a bank account, how to negotiate a loan, how to ask for microcredit. And we saw, as our interaction with not only the organizations that are inside the house, but outside, in our wider circles, that women in Italy have 0 financial education. They cannot negotiate interest rates, they have no idea what the pitfalls of asking for a loan are. They don't even know what are the mechanisms of protection against risk. So we really figured out that some sort of basic course would be in order. And we had enthusiastic support from the Bank of Italy. We are going to gather here the teachers of this training course at the highest level of the bank. The highest not, but a very high level of the bank. The Global Thinking Foundation has been doing this work in Milan and elsewhere in Washington, D.C. for a long, long time. We are going top financial journalists who are going to teach women how to read financial news and interpret that, how to, to basically scream out nuggets of information and truth from, the stuff that is fed to the journalists. So I think that this is something that we are doing for the wider community that is not in and of itself income generating, because this course is free for women, okay? The only income that we generate is that the Global Thinking Foundation will pay for the rent of the rooms, this room in particular, where the course will be taking place. Interestingly enough, we launched the course online. I mean, the announcement was made online in late August, that Italy, as you know, it's a no-no. Because we have only a capacity of 35, maybe 40 students, right? Within days, but hours, I should say, we received an overwhelming number of requests, so much so that we are already planning a course for next year, because otherwise these people will be left out. Not only that, due to conversations and the availability of these outstanding teachers, we are also planning an intermediate course So, and if you look at the list of people who responded to this invitation, they come from all walks of life. They are mainly Roman, but we have received requests from up north, down south. So we are now thinking of how making this an itinerant kind of thing. And it was a small idea, but it just took a life of its own. There is a process. Well, there are, first of all, the family members that have sort of, the family members of this place that have been there forever and that stay, unless they dismantle on their own volition, they'll stay in the consortium. And then there is an application process. So you have to go through a process that would ascertain that in fact your organization is a women's organization that is sound in purpose and scope. And this is decided, proposed by the board, but decided by the assembly. Who gets in and gets out.
Do the organisations make a financial contribution?
Yeah, in the sense that they they do it in two ways. One is direct and one is indirect. The direct way is they pay rent. We have,
For being in the building?
for having an office in the
Yeah.
building. If you are in the building and you don't have an office, you don't pay any rent. Then we have the so-called cards, the Casa, internazionale delle donne cards, which cost 15 euros, and this is a way of supporting the house, the Casa, and we expect the organizations that are part of this consortium to actually sell some of these cards. And then there is an indirect way. Organizations organize events here, so they pay rent obviously for renting the facilities. They bring new people into the configuration of the Casa and the activities of the Casa, and therefore it's not necessarily a financial contribution that they make, but they make a contribution of ideas, work sometimes.
But you don't actually have any sort of assessment as to what these organisations could or should financially contribute to something that they are actually also getting a benefit from?
No, in that sense not. We think that the rent matches, and we cannot demand more.
And is the rent comparable to rent outside, or is it lower?
Absolutely not.
No.
It's calculated on square meters that you occupy. I mean, there is some financial determinant in that, but it's not at all. Here is the center of Rome. Rents in this area, if we were to rent an office somewhere else in this very area, I'm not very familiar with the real estate market, but I would easily say that you would pay twice or twice as much.
One thing there, just with the governance issues you're talking about.
Yes.
Is there any opportunity for the community to be involved?
That's a very interesting question, because the idea behind the foundation, creating a foundation, was exactly this, to expand the circle of friends, to include the community, the larger community in the running of the Casa. That idea, as I said, went nowhere. But the point is that as we are now, no. It's not that the assembly of the organizations of the managing board are impermeable to other people's contribution. Not at all. We are actually thinking of, since the work is really a lot, and we are 6 members of the board, so it's not really, it's really onerous. We are thinking of creating Friends of the Casa who can support us in managing this place. So far, we haven't come to that determination with a plan of action. It's just sort of ideas that are floating, and quite frankly, perhaps those are ideas that the next managing board will take.
Yes, it would cement the organisation in the community, would help that, wouldn't it?
Well, again, remember, this is also a place that has a past, and therefore it's not in our daily practice to exclude ideas and contributions. What we try to do actually is to be the more as inclusive as possible of others. With the same frankness, I would say that that doesn't always work out for the best, or sometimes it's not even advisable. But the attitude, the perspective from all of us, the board, the assembly, and the individual organizations is to be inclusive rather than exclusive, attractive rather than... Well, one thing, may I add something to that, because it's something that is really tormenting me since I came back to Italy. When it comes, but the European Union is another matter, but when it comes to individual donors, one of the things that we have found particularly challenging is to make these donors understand that they have to grant general money, not project-specific money. Because running an operation, administration, controlling, economic controlling issues, salaries to be paid, electricity and other bills to be paid, requires dedicated funds. And I wish, and this is something that I personally am doing, not for the Casa, but for my own organization, I'm not writing any more proposals that do not address the issue of core funding. They have to understand, donors, and all of you should be part, in my view, all people who have a stake in this issue, to make donors understand that projects, yes, bring prestige and visibility to a funding donor. But we people who are running these projects or making these projects possible, and we are not specifically in the project, we do not live off thin air, you know. And this is something that really, I think, big foundation, when I was in the United States, that was a point of advocacy that was actually for a long time very successful, with major foundations such as MacArthur, Ford, Rockefeller, Tides, Open Society. They understood the value of this argument. But then somehow, I would say after September 11, 2001 of course, this perspective has been lost. And we have to be really vocal in restoring it, because otherwise, when you talk of sustainability, sustainability is not possible without core funding.